Feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of being a single parent? You are not alone. Welcome to the Single Parent Reset, the podcast that helps you navigate the ups and downs of single parenthood and find the balance that you deserve. Whether you're a single parent, co-parent or a solo parent, this is the show for you. I'm Orla and I'm a life coach for single parents. And as a single parent myself, I know how hard it can be. But I also believe that every single parent has the strength to create a life that they are proud of. In each episode, we'll shine a light on the unique struggles single parents face and cover the aspects of single parenting that are too often overlooked and left unspoken. I'll be sharing actionable steps to help you overcome these challenges and find a more calm and fulfilled life. Single Parent Reset is your weekly opportunity to gain a fresh perspective, take back control, and feel more in charge of your journey. Today, we are going to discuss the feelings of guilt that can come up for single parents and 3 questions you can ask yourself to help you overcome the feelings of guilt and gain a more positive perspective. Parent guilt is something most parents deal with at one point or another, but for single parents, this guilt can feel even heavier. Guilt for single parents can show up in so many forms. Guilt for no longer being with your child's other parent. Guilt that your children have to spend time between 2 houses. Guilt for taking some time out for yourself. Guilt for not managing to juggle work and home life and feeling like you're failing at both. Guilt for having to rely more on family and friends for help. Guilt for not being able to go to certain events or nights out anymore and feeling like you're letting people down. Guilt that your child might be impacted due to your home circumstances. Guilt for causing an extra worry to your own family. I mean, I could go on and on. The list is endless, and it can be too easy to let the guilt spiral out of control to a point where you feel like you're not doing enough, even when you're doing your absolute best. It's important to recognize those feelings, but also know that holding on to the guilt doesn't serve you or your children in the long run. Today, we're going to explore 3 questions you can ask yourself to shift that perspective and lighten the emotional loads. My single parent guilt kicked in big time for me just over 2 years ago when my son was 3. I had just started a new job, which was better paid than my previous job, which massively appealed to me because having recently become a single parent at the time, I was suddenly realising that I needed to up my financial game to make ends meet now that my household was one income down. I was so happy when I got the new job and I couldn't wait to get stuck into the new role. However, with the extra money did come extra responsibility. I was having to work much longer hours and I was mentally drained by the end of the day. This coincided with exactly when my son was going through a particularly difficult stage when it came to his bedtime. It got to a point where I was dreading doing bedtime, as it often resulted in a house of tantrums and tears from my son, let's face it, sometimes me. And my son he'd been so good at going to bed. It became absolutely exhausting and I just had no energy or patience for it, which exacerbated the matter even more. I remember I would just lie in bed at night and I was riddled with feelings of guilt, thinking that taking on this new job was impacting my son's sleep as he was spending longer hours at nursery. Guilt that I wasn't being a good enough parent to my son because I was too stressed out in the new job to have any capacity to deal with his difficult bedtimes. I was feeling really guilty that I was not even getting to see my son that much anymore during the week due to my longer hours. I felt completely overwhelmed with guilt and felt like I was failing on all fronts until I finally realised that this cannot go on, and I asked myself 3 questions that helped shift my mindset and gain a much more positive and helpful perspective on my situation. I now go back to these questions time and time again when I feel guilt creeping in. They are a great way to anchor me back into a more positive, realistic outlook, and I hope they will do the same for you. So starting with the first of the 3 questions, is this a helpful thought? When you notice a thought that has guilt attached to it running through your head, stop for a minute and just ask yourself, Is this a helpful thought? Really think about it. Is it useful for you to keep running this through your head, or is it adding unnecessary negative noise to your already busy mind? When I'd started that new job and I was lying in bed at night telling myself over and over that I am the worst mum, I'm a terrible mum, was that a helpful thought? No, it was not. That was not a constructive thought. If anything, it was more damaging for me to think that because it was making me feel worse and worse about myself. So once I asked myself, is this a helpful thought? It really helped me gain a little bit more perspective and think, no, this is not a helpful thought. And I could start redirecting my focus elsewhere, thinking about, well, what can I do about this situation? Another example of this could be around buying birthday presents or Christmas presents. Do you really need to feel guilty that you didn't buy your child that present that was at the top of their list? If the answer is no, let the thought go and divert your focus to something more positive. Instead of focusing on the fact you couldn't get the number one present, focus on what you could provide, which was a special day for your child. And I promise you, it will be the special moments that you spend together that they will remember over whether they got the latest toy. Focus on the positives and do not dwell on feeling guilty for what you are lacking. By dwelling on all you don't have, you are missing out on enjoying everything that you do have. The second go-to question I ask myself when I can feel myself feeling guilty is this in my control or not? This has got to be one of my favourite questions to ask myself. So often we feel guilty for situations that are truly out of our control. No amount of guilt is going to change the situation. If you're feeling guilty about something that is completely out of your control, like the fact your children no longer see their other parents due to circumstances out of your control, stop letting the guilt for this hang over you. Begin to accept the situation for what it is and focus on the positives within it. This is a much healthier way to approach it rather than letting guilt ruin the situation. Some of the positives that you could focus on if you're a single parent and the other parent is not in the picture at all is, one, maybe your kids actually have a really special bond with your own parents, as they may have stepped in to help a little bit more with raising your kids. Or maybe your own siblings, your own brothers and sisters are now super aunts and uncles to your kids and have an extra special bond. Or one thing I know for me, my own friends, they think the world of my son, and the bond that they have with my son is so special to me. And I know that is because they have spent so much extra time with my son, because there are times I've had to bring him to things where normally if I had another partner on the scene, he wouldn't have come. So that's really nice. Also, you don't have to consult anyone when it comes to making decisions, especially when it comes to your parenting style. You get to decide how you want to raise your kids. And yes, this can be overwhelming at times, but also it doesn't mean that you waste countless evenings arguing over how you're going to do your routines in the morning or whatever it may be. You have the sole autonomy as to how you want to raise your family, and that can be quite special too. Everyone's situation is different, and it can just be too easy to focus on the negatives. But the more you start practicing focusing on the positives, the more you realise that your energy is just wasted spending time looking at those negatives on the situations that you cannot control. So focusing on the positives is a much better thing for you to do. If you're feeling guilty for something that is in your control, like for example, you are guilty that you were constantly late for school pickup due to your work hours, take some time to look at your options and which would be the best for you. Perhaps you can speak to your boss about flexible hours, or ask a fellow school parent to share pickups, or ask more work from home days to cut out the commute time. Weigh up the options and take action rather than sitting feeling guilty for something that is in your power to change. The more you practice asking this question, the better you will get at understanding what is in your control and what isn't, and what you need to do. If it's not in your control, learn to accept the situation and let go of the guilt. If it is in your control, look at your options and take action. The third question I ask myself and can instantly shift my perspective and make myself meet my own situation with compassion is, what would I say to a friend who had the same thought? The minute I ask myself this, I suddenly hear my thoughts from a much kinder and caring perspective. When I was lying in bed awake in the middle of the night during that really difficult period when I started a new job, and I was consumed by guilt, particularly that I was honestly just not a good enough mum for my son, I would imagine a friend saying this and I would think of the advice that I would give to them. And it came so easily. So I lay there and I said over and over to myself, you are a good parent. You are doing a great job. You are doing more than enough for your son. Because I know this is exactly what I would have told a friend in my situation. And there are too many times as single parents where there is no one to see the struggles of difficult bedtimes and there's no one to debrief at the end of the day. And in these moments, you have to be kind and supportive to yourself. So asking yourself, what would I say to friends who have the same thoughts, is a great way to shift perspective and stop the negative self-talk driven by guilt. When guilt takes over, we tend to be our own worst critics. Looking at your thoughts from the perspective of a friend can bring much needed compassion and help you realize when you are being too hard on yourself. So there you have it, 3 questions for you to come back to and ask yourself when you are finding guilt is looming heavy over you. Is this a helpful thought? Is this in my control? What would I say to a friend who had the same thought? Remember, it's absolutely okay to feel the guilt, but it's also okay to let it go. What have you been feeling particularly guilty about lately? Ask yourself one of these 3 questions today and see if you can release the feelings of guilt and free up some space for more positive, productive thoughts. Remember, it is only you in your head constructing your story, so be a kind narrator to your story. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, please go to my website, Suddles Coaching, for further details. And don't forget to follow my Instagram page @Suddles Coaching for more insightful content on living a life to be proud of as a single parent. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Single Parent Reset. You've taken 15 minutes out of your day to do something for you, and that alone is definitely a step in the right direction. If you find this useful, please share it with your friends and family. And remember, some single parents may seem like they have it all together, but this could be exactly what they need to hear to get them through this week. So do the kind thing and pass it on.